The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Reaper Apparel Company. Reaper Apparel offers a casual line of superb fit, finish, and comfort. We design for those who refuse to die slowly and choose to live untamed. For those who aren't afraid to face the dark, for the ones that thrive in it, and for those who can appreciate life through a grim lens. That's Reaper Apparel Company. Go to the link in the description of this episode, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my own personal merch store, the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. I have hats, I have t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, water bottles, notebooks, you name it, I've got it. The description and the link for that will be in the description of this episode. Also, right now, if you use the promo code WELCOME, I will give you 5% off of your first purchase. That's the Stupid Should Hurt merch store. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by Tactical Brotherhood, all American-made apparel, which helps support the Second Amendment. You can also find all this in the description of this episode with the link, Tactical Brotherhood. Part of every proceed does go to helping veterans, as it is a very good cause. All American-made products made right here in Minnesota. Go and check them out. Use the promo code PATRIOT15 to get 15% off your purchase. Now, let's start the show. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ride Home Rants podcast. This is, as always, your host, Mike Bono. I have a fantastic and special episode for us today, but first and foremost, everybody, please go and check out our newest sponsor, Buddy's Beard Care. Beard oils, beard washes, and beard balms. Everything you're going to need to keep your beard looking healthy, thicker, and a lot more full. I've been using these products for a little over a month now. My beard has never been healthier. It has never been thicker. And according to my wife, it has never been softer. Go to buddysbeardcare.com. Check them out. Tell them Mike Bono from Ride Home Rants sent you. You won't be disappointed in this. Buddy's Beard Care, where size does matter. That being said, our show today is a panel of guests, and we are going to be breaking down the college football playoffs. I have a ragtag group of guests today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we're going to start with everybody's favorite manager of the podcast, Johnny.
Everybody, Johnny Fiddy Falconi. I'm the manager of the Ride Home Rants podcast. I actually played college football as a wide receiver at Bethany College. I currently work at Notre Dame College as the assistant dean of enrollment.
All right, and let's go to Mr.
Askew, a.k.a. Vampire Coach. You already know. Defensive coordinator. Love this podcast show. It's one of the best in the business. Make sure everybody, you know what I'm saying, tune in, tell a friend, and tell another friend. Mr. Askew, that's me.
Mister, where'd you play college football at?
Oh, college football. I played at Alabama A&M, and I played at Elizabeth City State University.
Appreciate the shout out. You almost forgot to tell us where you played college ball at there, Coach. All right, let's go on over to Jonas next.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jonas Jackson. Originally from Bolson, Massachusetts. Did my undergraduate football career at Eastern Michigan University, and currently I'm the D-line coach over at Prairie View A&M outside of Houston, Texas.
All right, next on the list, Dan.
Thanks, Bono. Dan Bolson. I'm a graduate of Eureka College, which we got a couple of Eureka brethren on here. I was a defensive end for Eureka. I ended up working in athletics in Champaign-Urbana at the University of Illinois, as well as the Big Ten Conference. And then ultimately, now I currently have been heading into my 9th calendar year as a part of Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. So I do not work in athletics anymore, but pivoted into the university administration side. So having a good time with it.
Absolutely. Next on the list, Jovon.
How y'all doing? I'm Jovon Johnson. Originally, I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. Spent some time coaching at Defiance College as the defensive coordinator, DB coach, for 4 seasons. And then the last 2 years, been the head coach at Northeast High School in Pennsylvania. So I'm happy to be here. I'm glad y'all invited me on.
Absolutely.
Jovon, you can't get off that easy, man. Where'd you go to college? You got to tell everybody.
I'm a Hawkeye, University of Iowa. So, I'm rooting for the Big Ten.
Hey, Jovon, are you at Northeast? Are you at the Northeast that Troy Gore preceded you?
No,
Okay, not the Philly Northeast?
No, I'm in Western Pennsylvania, so I'm on the other end of the state.
I got you.
All right, and next here we're going to go with the brothers. We're going to start with Ryan.
Starting off with the better brother. I like it, Bono. I'm Ryan Barth. I went to Eureka College and played football there. And then I coach basketball and work as a middle school TA right now in the Fieldcrest School District. I think I said I coach basketball as well. Yeah. And then I just resigned from my position of coaching football at Eureka College recently. So moving along in that regard.
All right, and his brother, we'll say the better brother just to keep this lively here, but Drew.
Hey, thanks, Bono. They always say I save the best for last right out of the brothers, so that's why I'm the youngest too. So once they got to me, they finally stopped. But thanks for having me on again. Also graduated Eureka College, and then actually Dan Bolson, who is on here now, is my boss at Purdue University. So shout out to him for bringing me to the Big Ten school out in West Lafayette.
Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, our favorite coach on the show, Hal.
Hal Mumme. I played football in the previous century at Tarleton State University. I've coached for about 40-something years, and I've been the head coach at 7 different colleges, including Kentucky, and we started the air raid offense, so that's kind of my claim to fame.
All right, Coach, we're glad we were able to get you on here. So we got a lot to uncover in this college football preview show. Let's go ahead and get rolling. This first question we're going to have for the entire group here. Jonas, let's start with you. Who's the overall best coaching staff out of these 4 teams and why?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm going to have to go with Alabama. They just have been so dominant since Nick Saban's been there, just everything that they've accomplished, the consistency. They're just a staple of when you think about championships in this, BCS private championship football mode. That guy has just done a great job year after year after year. And I know, we see teams, these other 3 teams have had opportunities to win championships as well. But just nobody's been more consistent at this level out of these coaching staffs, in my opinion, than Nick Saban and those Alabama Crimson Tide.
All right. Jovon, what about you?
I think I'm going to have to agree there. When you think about success over the last couple decades, Saban has had a hand in a multitude of championships. Didn't matter what school in the SEC he was at, whether it was LSU, Alabama. He's just consistently, won championships. And I think that their staff, just the way they're able to retool after guys move on to get head coaching jobs and still be at the pinnacle of success, I think that's a masterful job that he's doing down there. And he's a Big Ten guy. So, I think Saban's staff is the best right now.
Absolutely. All right. Drew, what about you?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is Alabama staff. But when your head coach misses 6 games out of the year and you're still undefeated, Michigan staff's been doing pretty well this year. So, I kind of give it a tie just because of that. And you got Connor Stallions. He got fired, but hey.
All right. Let's see what your boss has to say to that. Dan, what about you?
Get myself unmuted. I should have done that quicker. I apologize. So this is almost an impossible question because you can go historical perspective or you can go any different way you want on this. Nick Saban is a legend. He has a statue built, and it's almost impossible to say he's not one of the best coaches of all time. With that said, I'm going to go completely out of left field, and I'm going to give a shout out to Kalen DeBoer at Washington. Oh. And the reason for that is the man wins. And so now that is not a preface of my picks in this, but in terms of Kalen DeBoer, he's 103-11 as a head coach. That's ridiculous, right? Now this guy's won at Sioux Falls. He then became a coordinator for about a decade, and he from 2010 to COVID, he kind of bounced around D1 coordinator jobs, Eastern Michigan, some other places that he was at for a few years, and then he took over Fresno State. All he did at Fresno State was go 3-3 his first year in COVID with that shortened season, turns around, gets them 9-3, goes and takes the job at Washington, wins the Alamo Bowl at 9-3 last year, goes undefeated this year, and is winning every Coach of the Year award there is. So this season, or in terms of somebody who's no one's talking about, I give a shout out to Kalen DeBoer. That does not mean he's better than Nick Saban, but you asked the question of what's the best coaching staff. Kalen DeBoer is a winner. Everyone hates Washington. No one's picking Washington to do anything. If they lose by 50, everyone predicts it. But frankly, the guy is a hustler, and he's won a ton of close games. And there's something to be said where you can grind out close wins. And Washington just keeps winning close games. We could call it luck. At some point, it's not luck when you just keep winning close games.
Absolutely. Johnny, what about you?
It's going to pain me to say this. I'm going to say Michigan, and here's why. Guys get suspended, guys get fired, they keep on winning with a bunch of different head coaches, and it's not like they had just one guy who's been a head coach be the head coach. It's not like, for example, Nick Saban got suspended 6 games, and Lane Kiffin was his assistant, who was a multiple-time head coach, comes in and be the interim during that time. Michigan had 3 different head coaches during that time, and the train kept on rolling. Now everybody knows here, too, you're going to win when you have good players. Good players make a coach look great, but a really good coach can make good players be great. I think Michigan's staff is just great. And to me, they have multiple guys I think that they're going to lose from this staff in the next year or two to NFL and college jobs. And I'm going to just say it's Michigan right now because those at least 3 to 4 of those guys will be gone within a year or two to other head coaching jobs.
All right. Mister, what about you?
Man, I'm going to have to go with Michigan, man. I think, anytime you have your head coach, not there at the game and you have enough staff in place to carry the torch like they did this year, at the beginning of this year, and even towards the end, it really kind of says something about your staff that you have put together. We know how, when John came in, where Michigan was at during that time period before, there's been some bumpy ride, but to be able to consistently, get the wins where it need to be and beat that team down south, so to say. I think he did a real good job, because you got guys that's constantly leaving and leaving that coaching staff. So I have to go with Michigan.
Okay. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I think all of these staffs are great, and all of them have had different upbringings, I guess, with the way that Washington, the way they've won, and then Texas, they've had some bumps in the road with Sarkisian and what he's gotten to where they're at right now. And then same with Alabama when Saban came in and what he's built it into now, and then same for Harbaugh. They've all had different paths and all haven't tasted instant success, but they've stayed to the path that they were on, and it's been very interesting and interesting to watch. I would say probably Alabama just because of all their success, and that doesn't just go with wins and losses, but what they do after college as well, and all of the players that they've sent to the NFL and their respected careers as well. And I would say that Alabama probably has the best staff.
Okay. And Hal, round us out with this question.
Well, I'm going to, first of all, they're all good staffs. I mean, but if we're just talking about this season, and I think Nick Saban's the best coach of my generation. But I'm going to go with, I'm going to show Texas some love because after all, they did beat Alabama. And Sarkisian has done a great job in a very difficult situation. And it was made more difficult when he lost his starting quarterback halfway through the year. So I think they were able to adjust and play good defense, run the ball when they had to, and bring along a backup quarterback that ended up winning all the games for him. So I'll give Texas some love on this.
All right. Got a nice mixed bag there. I mean, it's hard to argue with all those points there, but I think the general consensus is how do you vote against Saban in Alabama for sure. But next here, Mister, this one is just for you here. I got a question for you here. So your brother BJ is a former standout at Michigan, and he played for the Jets fullback. And BJ played with a number of NFL players at Michigan, such as Braylon Edwards, Jason Avant, Chris Perry, Victor Habson, and others. Do you think Michigan has the same type of players as when your brother played there, or are they better now?
No, they are nowhere near the type of players they had when my brother was there. You can go up and down that roster. When he was there the 4 or 5 years before and even after. You look at the quarterbacks. You had Tom Brady was there. You had Drew that was there at one point. The running back situation, I mean, you were with A-Train, my brother, the receiver, David Terrell. You had, Shay, fullback, tight end. And that's just on the offense side of the ball. Defensively, man, I mean, they were stacked, man, from top to bottom, all over the place. They are nowhere near, man. That's one thing I think that Michigan has lacked, and probably that the last 10 to 15 years is getting those quality athletes like they used to, because they be able to pluck them out of Ohio, PA, down Florida. But I don't think they're getting those type of athletes like they used to year in and year out, If my brother was around with all this NIL deal, oh, man, I can only imagine.
Absolutely.
Mister, let me ask you a question, Mister, because I know we've always talked about BJ, and the older guys on the show remember when BJ played for the Jets and blocked for Curtis Martin, NFL Hall of Famer. Was BJ and Chris Perry a better backfield than Blake Corum and their other running back? Can you say Chris Perry is better than Blake Corum? And is your brother better than their backup running back? Because, I mean, your brother should have been a running back there if he wasn't with Chris Perry.
Man, you know what? I'll go a step further, man, and make it real nice and easy for you. He was better than A-Train. My brother was better than A-Train. He was better than all of them. But just to add, to answer your question, him and Perry, or even when it was Walter Cross or I can't think of the other guy, maybe Howard, I think might have been there, but they had a better overall running back group than than they have right now. Yeah, you can't even compare. Yeah, he can't even compare.
Okay. Hey, it's hard to argue those.
I even give Mike Hart some love. Mike Hart wasn't bad at all either. I'll give him some love too. A little bit now.
All right. So we're going to bring this back to the entire group. And Jonas, we're going to start with you. All of you either are former or current college players or coaches. Let's talk about which of these 4 teams is the best offensively and defensively, in your opinion.
Man, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this, but just kind of looking at the records of these teams, which the margin of error and the margin of separation is very thin. I'm really liking that Alabama defense because of what they did against Georgia. You look at, Georgia scoring 30, 40, 50 points a game, except for 2 games. And one of them was against that Alabama defense. And so, I really like what that Alabama defense did against Georgia. Michigan, I had a chance to watch Michigan play against Ohio State. That's the only game I had a chance to see them play. But I've seen Michigan over the years. And although, there's something to be said about the quarterback situation at Ohio State, in comparison to some of the other quarterbacks they've had most recently, I just don't think that they were, that guy was as a game-changing as some of the other quarterbacks. But I thought Michigan played really tough defense as well. And, I take a lot from that Ohio State game because that is the rival game, right? I thought, that Michigan defense, man, I thought they really played as good as any of the Michigan defenses that I've seen in a while, in a long time. Now, this running back for Michigan, man, he's found the end zone a lot. We're talking 24 touchdowns on the season. That's got to be up there amongst the nation's best from an offensive standpoint. You look at the quarterbacks from both of those two teams, they're fairly even, especially in total yards. And then you look at the 2 top receivers from that Alabama and those Michigan teams. I mean, they're fairly even as well in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. So, in terms of Michigan and Alabama, I think it's going to be a defensive deal, man. But I'm looking at that Alabama defense. I'm kind of going that way because I really like what they did against Georgia. As far as Texas and Washington, this quarterback, Penix, man, hey, big Penix energy. He is getting it done, boy. I mean, he's over 4,000 yards throwing the football. I mean, that is pretty special. That is pretty special to me. And then, you look at the running backs, fairly even there. Fairly even in yards, carries, and touchdowns. You look at, the receivers, the 2 top receivers, Worthy, and then the Odunze kid. I mean, they are fairly even as well, although Odunze has seen the end zone a lot more than Worthy has. But, fairly even there in reception. So, I got to give the nod there to Washington's offense. I'm going to give the nod there to Washington's offense. So I think Alabama's defense and Washington's offense, man, I think those would be my 2 picks.
Okay. Jovon, what about you?
I mean, honestly, I don't think there's any wrong answers here. I mean, you can go either which way. I think these guys have been proven to showcase, what they're able to do on a week-to-week basis, defensively, offensively. I think I've seen Michigan's defense in person against my Iowa Hawkeyes in the Big Ten championship game, and I was not very impressed because Iowa's offense isn't very good, and they did kind of move the ball against them, even though they didn't score points. But I just think Michigan's defense is a little bit overrated. I think they're at them as a whole team. I think they have a very good offense and how they are able to run the football with those 2 running backs. And McCarthy is an athlete that when he gets the ball in space, he makes things happen. But I think Alabama is the better of the 4 when it comes to defensively, just because I kind of know their scheme. They are a lot like Iowa in their scheme that they run. And they've consistently been one of the best defenses in all of America. I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you have to go with either Texas or Washington. I mean, both of those teams are explosive on offense. Texas has, I think, a little bit of a better running game, but I think, Penix is was the runner-up for the Heisman, and I thought he should have won. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think Washington's offense is probably the best in the playoff right now, with their ability to just be quick strike and do a lot of different things.
Okay. Fiddy, what about you?
Washington for sure offensively. Michael Penix, best offensive player out of the 4 teams. Defensively, I'm going to kind of go off what Jovon said. Iowa, statistically, worst offense in America. I mean, it is what it is. They won with special teams and defense. I'm pretty sure I'm 37 and I could go play quarterback better at Iowa, and I never played quarterback before better than Deacon Hill. And I'm pretty sure, like, Jovon's like 38, and he can come play receiver better than anybody, was there. We can even have Mr. Askew come be our fullback, too, at, like, what are you, Mr. 50 now? So,
oh, man.
But in all seriousness, Michigan really actually struggled against that Iowa team. If Iowa didn't have those 2 turnovers that they punch in and make it scores, Iowa potentially had a chance to win that game. So I can't say Michigan's defense is that great. I'm going to say Alabama's defense is that good because Nick Saban is that good of a D coordinator, and Nick Saban also learned from Bill Belichick on that Brown staff. So I'm giving a nod to Alabama defensively and Washington, no doubt, offensively.
All right. Dan, what about you?
Again, these questions of who's the best at this or that, it's a complete Yahtzee barrel, right? Throw the dice out. They're going to come up different every single time. With that said, I do think there's really only one stat that pops out to me that makes one team different in one aspect. My concern for Washington's their defense, the 93rd ranked defense in the country. They've not really proven that they've won a lot of close games, and I gave them a lot of props a moment ago for winning close games in the Pac-12 or Pac-2 or whatever we're going to call it now with what's going on with the realignment. But they've won on the West Coast. What I don't trust them to do is have nearly as much offensive success against Texas. Texas has got some dogs in the trenches. Now the former defensive lineman. They got 2 future NFL beasts coming down the pipe. I want to see Penix stand in the pocket when he's got 2 people blowing those guards and those centers up. And Texas is going to be in his face all day long. So that, to me, is worth a couple possessions that might have been a first down every other game this season that turn into a punt because there's extra pressure in there and he's got to rush a little bit. Now, he can scramble, but he's not going to have as much time to throw those 50, 60-yard bombs that he's capable of throwing down the field. That takes time to develop. So for that reason, I'm going to have to say that Texas, I think, is the most balanced team this year in this playoff, just because their offense and defense combo. Doesn't mean they're going to win the national championship. That's not my pick yet. With that said, I do think they're the most balanced. So my offensive pick for best offense singularly, I'm going to actually give the nod to someone I didn't mention yet, which is Alabama. And the reason I'm going to give them a nod offensively, and again, we could split statistical hairs everywhere, but Jalen Milroe was benched earlier in the year. He came back and has been phenomenal, right? 23 touchdowns. Of those 23 touchdowns, 20 of them have been from over 15 yards out from the end zone, whether that's running or throwing. The guy has been sensational with 2,700 passing yards, and he's probably the closest thing we've had to a little bit of Tim Tebow comparison, which not to bring that into it, but in terms of his power as a runner, he will run you over. Like, you get in Milroe's way, he's going to lower his shoulder, he'll just truck you. So I do think his ability to move the chains will be very effective for Alabama. So offensively, I'll give him a nod. Defensively, I'm going to go to Texas just because I love their defensive pressure up front. I believe these games, especially when these teams are all 4 top 20 in offense in the country, these games are won at the line of scrimmage. Ryan Barth knows that. Drew Barth knows that from no matter what level you're at. Those games are won in the trenches, and I think Texas can just blow up that Huskies offensive line.
Okay. Ryan, let's get your take on this.
Yeah. Dan brought out some great points there, but as an O-line coach and a former O-lineman, I'm going to give my nod to because Michigan a month ago when they played Penn State didn't throw one single pass in the second half against them. They ran the ball over 50 times. And if you don't have to air it out, there's no reason to. If you can keep the chains moving on the ground, keep the clock turning, a possession-type game, that's going to say something. And at the end of the game, I think it'll speak for itself as long as the turnover battle is 1-2. So I give my nod to Michigan there because their ability to run the ball. It's going to be interesting to see how they're able to against a bunch of 5-star guys as well from Alabama. And defensively, I'd give my nod to Texas just to the same point as Dan brought up about their front 7, 6, whatever it is in the box that they play with. I just think that there's speed on the defensive side, and I don't know up front how well Washington's going to be able to handle that type of pressure. They've won the close games throughout the year, but they might meet their maker this week when they're playing the front 7 from Texas and all that speed around them as well to complement their size. So I give my offensive nod to Michigan just because of their ability to run the ball, and then defensive Texas.
Okay. Let's see what little brother has to say. Drew.
He's throwing shade at me because we ran the same play 25 times in a row. Left flex king, 25 lead. It happened. I'm not kidding. It was right to Ryan's side, too, so he was throwing shade at me. And, Fiddy, I'd like to see you play quarterback because I've seen you throw the ball, and it is not pretty.
So. You're wrong. I would zip. Now, listen, I wasn't even a quarterback, and I could zip those things. I can throw the ball. You know, because you and I did the punt drills. You know I could launch that ball a good solid 40 yards. And I never even played quarterback.
You're right. Do it. I seen him do it.
You're right, Fiddy. I just had to throw it in there. You guys are always giving me shit on here, so I had to throw it back finally. But being a former quarterback, who cares about defense? I mean, who really cares about any of that? Because I don't care about it. I'm trying to score on them, but I'll give the nod. Pride Alabama. Not saying it's going to be my pick, just because they slowed down that Georgia team. It was very explosive offense. And I think that's why Carson Beck's coming back, because he has some more to prove. And offensively, like mentioned before, big Penix energy. Second, the Heisman. Somebody mentioned that earlier. I love their offense. Enjoy watching it. And I think I don't like the Texas defenses picked by the other two. They're Eureka College graduates. I mean, maybe that's why they're not so bright. But, man, it's great to throw shade at other people finally for once.
You're just throwing all types of shade.
Alabama on defense and Washington on offense.
Okay. Mister, what about you?
I'll tell you what, man, all them choices, man, are good. You know, defensively, man, I have to go with, Michigan and that team down south with the Tide. You know, I just think that, them guys are just relentless, man. And I think those defense rise to the occasion, no matter who they're playing. The one thing I will say about Texas, though, that front line, defensive line that they have, they do apply pressure and do come off the ball. Offensively, man, the quarterback, Mike Penix over there at Washington, I think, that's a classic case, man, of, I just not going to be denied. Think about, I wonder what the Indiana coaches think right now. Because, he was at Indiana, and, left. And, of course, we know he's over there at Washington. But think about you a coach on that staff, and, you have somebody like that, and he go over there to Washington and just tear it up. I would feel pretty bad. What about you, Jonas? Or how? I would feel terrible. But I have to get the nod to Washington on offense, and the other two, like I said, Michigan and Alabama.
All right, Hal, round us out with this.
Well, I just think Alabama's the better team overall. It's hard to get a read on Washington. I love Penix. I love watching them play. I like what they did this year, but I think it's going to be hard for them to hold up to a Texas defensive front or an Alabama defense. So I like Alabama both ways.
Okay. All right. So, Fiddy, let's start with you because I know you love your predictions and your stat man. So what is your prediction for each game with the score and who ultimately wins the national championship?
Yeah, I was really off on this on last year's show, so might be off again. Who knows? I'm going to go Alabama 20, Michigan 17. So Alabama wins that game. I'm going to go Washington 31, Texas 27. I have Washington and Alabama playing in the national championship.
Okay. Drew, what about you? Now, let's not try to throw any shade, but let's throw some scores out this time.
Yeah, I'll be better this time. Sorry about it. I got a little heated earlier.
You're good.
I think Michigan beats Alabama, though. I know I picked Alabama's defense, but I do think Michigan ends up beating them with the last-second field goal. With the same score, 2017, but flip Fiddy. So we have the same numbers there. And then I think Washington does beat Texas. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game there. Maybe we'll get a scoregami score, maybe like a 41, What's another one in there? Throw a random number in there, 36 or something. So I got Washington and Michigan. Are we picking national champion now or not yet?
No.
No.
All right. Well, that's my national championship matchup. Washington, Michigan.
All right. Jonas, what about you?
I got Bama and Texas by 9.
Okay. Dan.
I'm going to take Michigan to beat Alabama 22-20, and then I've got Texas in a bit of an offensive shootout, 38-27 over Washington.
Okay, Mister.
They got Michigan over Alabama 28-17, and Washington over Texas 48-42.
Okay, Jovon.
Ooh, they putting up some numbers there. I'm taking Michigan over Bama. And a close one, I think it's going to be a field goal type of game. I think 17-14, not a lot of points scored. But then I'm going to take Texas to beat Washington. Again, probably around 28-24 Texas. So I got Texas, Michigan in the national championship.
Okay. Ryan.
Yeah, I'm gonna ride the coattails. I'm gonna take Michigan 24-21 over Bama, and then I got Texas in a little bit of a shootout as well. I think some offensive firepower coming out with 35-31 finale.
Okay.
Final score.
Hal, what about you?
Well, I'm going to go against the grain a little bit here. First of all, I don't think there's going to be any offensive shootouts. Last night, everybody thought that was going to be an offensive shootout, and it was 3-0 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
With Ohio State and Missouri. The problem with the way they're doing the playoffs is the long layoff the kids have. And there's just a lot of distractions. And anyway, I think Texas will beat Washington. It's going to be something like 21-17. And Alabama will beat Michigan, and it's going to be the same kind of score.
Okay. So let's stay with you, and this one is just for you. I mean, you've coached at Kentucky. You played teams like Alabama, Syracuse, Penn State, LSU, and many other top teams in the country. As a coach, how are you preparing your team to play in such a high-stake game against another team in a legendary, stature, and arguably saying Alabama, Michigan, and Texas are 3 out of the top 5 football programs ever? So what goes into preparing for that type of game?
Well, you just got to be consistent. We never changed our plan from whether we were playing Indiana or playing Alabama. It was the same plan, and I think you can almost talk the players. I mean, you got to remember you're playing with guys who are 19, 20, 21 years old. I mean, you don't want to plant so much in their heads that they can't be instinctive. And so I tried to just have the same plan. I wanted every day of the week to be the same. But every Monday was the same, every Tuesday was the same, every Wednesday was the same. It didn't matter who we were playing or where we were in the season. So I think that helped with being consistent.
Okay. So next here for the entire group, and Jovon, we're going to start with you. Which of these teams is built to return as a top 4 playoff team next season?
I'm going to have to say Michigan. I think Michigan is one of the best overall programs with the makeup of their team and, the constant ability to recruit and bring in top-notch guys, the 5-star guys. They got some very good players and a lot of talent coming back. They're going to lose some players to the NFL, but I think defensively, the Big Ten is built around defense, and Big Ten has like 4 of the top 5 defenses in the country. So I think defensively they're going to be better, and I think offensively they're just going to continue to retool and just continue to be successful under Harbaugh.
Okay. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, you could say almost all of them have a really good chance to make it back. I would say I would agree with Jovon with Michigan, and I would also Texas, the way they've built the past couple of years under Sarkisian. He's been on the uphill trend of building the program to where he wants it to be, and I'd say it come down to those two. But then again, you got Alabama, who as well has built and just been at the top year after year after year. I would go with Jovon, Michigan. They have a good chance to get back to the playoff next year as well. I don't know if Ohio State will bring in a quarterback to be able to knock them off the top of the Big Ten, but we'll see. I think Michigan will be back where they're at as long as Harbaugh returns. Let's add that asterisk.
I was just say, Harbaugh might be jumping ship too. So there's a lot of ifs there in Michigan. Dan, I think we can see with the background you got. But who's your pick here for the return?
Yeah, so I made the background Texas because, again, I think Texas hoists that national championship trophy when this is all said and done this year. I also would say every one of these four teams is perennial contenders. This playoff expands next year to 12 teams. Right. So all of a sudden we got triple the amount of teams. So you can make a case all four of these are in the running every single year in their current structures, right? Washington's a little bit of a wild card going forward for, they have been over the years here and there. I like DeBoer a lot, so I think he's building a good program. But this is a rant podcast, so let me rant on why this conversation is largely irrelevant, Bono, because this drastic disaster that we call name, image, and likeness that is literally upside down, total dumpster fire. Let me call it just that. It is free agency every single year, rosters turnover. There's 30-some guys from most teams in the portal. There's over 1,000 players switching teams. Every roster is different every year. And for Coach Hal, and when he had Tim Couch, one of the best gunslingers of all time, he would have been getting $1 million, $2 million, $3 million offers as a senior, right? Before he threw for 4,200 yards and went to be the number one pick, he'd be getting, everybody done going to his high school coach.
I could have got him to come back. Yeah. I could have got him to come back nowadays.
And that's the thing. Well, and NIL has its place. I'm not against the athletes earning. That's a whole different discussion, right? I have no issues with the premise, but what's unfortunately happened in the short term is that it has gone completely off the rails. And so there's going to have to be some guidelines, some parameters. Until then, it's a wide open race every single year. I think guys like Halen DeBoer, and I have respect for his coaching style, he's good at using the portal, right? I mean, he went to Indiana and grabbed a quarterback that, frankly, everyone was like, yeah, he's struggling. And he's out there, he's a runner-up to the Heisman in a better system and a better setup. So you can make a case that these coaches are going to adapt. But I'm going to stick to your question. My final answer after my rant there is Texas. And the reason I keep going back to Texas is because they're joining the SEC, so they're about to get that lovely SEC treatment that we all know exists as a neutral observer. And also, Texas has oil money. Texas A&M, Texas, these schools, they are going nowhere. Because in this current setup of NIL, it's a giant printer machine that can print whatever it takes to draft the greatest free agent roster in the country. So, Georgia's sending dudes that are five-star cornerbacks that are landing at Purdue and other places right now in transfer portals because they just don't have room for them. They got 85 scholarships, and they can go get a better guy in the portal. So they're telling these five-star dudes who've been there 2 years, I'm so sorry, we love you, but you're not going to play anymore because we got guys better than you we can bring in. And every year it just becomes this roster turnover. So Texas, with the 12-team playoff going forward, and with oil money and the Longhorn Network, that Longhorn Network prints a lot of cash, fellas. Texas is going nowhere, and they got a guy in Sark who can run offense that'll keep them in any game. And going to the SEC, they're in with everybody else they need to be.
All right, Jonas, what about you?
Yeah, so I would say deja vu tells me Alabama, right? They've just kind of been a staple of this thing. And then just keeping in the lines of what Dan's talking about, Texas and Alabama, man, they've had a bag man for years. You know, I mean, they major in that sort of thing and have been doing it for a long time. So, yeah, I would say for sure Alabama and Texas. Now, there has been a little bit of chatter about old St. Nick winning this national title and, you know, headed back on up to the North Pole somewhere. So we shall see.
Okay. Drew, what about you?
Well, thanks for not going to me after Dan, because I forgot the question after he went on his rant. So thanks for not coming to me. So thanks, Dan. I'd have to say probably Texas. I mean, Dan hit all the spots right. I don't even go into detail because Dan pretty much hit it on the spot. He's pretty good at doing that. You know, I've been working with him for over a year now, so kind of learned his quirks and everything. So I'm just going to go with Texas and keep it short and simple.
Okay, Johnny.
Who'd you say, Mike?
You, Johnny.
Oh, me. Okay. Here's what I'm going to say. And I know it's going to be a topic we're going to talk about, but I'm going to say Washington, and here's why. Because they're new to the game. Now everybody's finally seeing them on a national level. They didn't see them before because playing on the Pacific Coast time. So now they're a cool place. The stadium's packed. The Heisman runner-up is from their school. They're getting all this free publicity, millions and millions of dollars of free publicity. And as long as they don't bomb in the playoffs, they will return because everybody's going to go, coolest place ever. Wow, I want to go to Washington. And you get more hits on the website. You get more people dumping in money. You get more people wanting to invest in NIL. You get more people wanting to invest in facilities. So everybody else has this all established, and they are who they are. But Washington is now going to become the cool place to go, and people are going to want to transfer there. People are going to want to go to school there. And I think Washington, because of that, is going to be the one who goes back to the playoffs.
Okay. Hal, what about you?
Well, I'm kind of like Dan. They're all going to make it because they're going to go to 12 next year. So if you're saying who gets back to the Final Four,
yeah,
that's a little tougher question because they're all going to have adjustments. They're all changing leagues. The players in Washington are going to have to learn to play in the Eastern time zone and the Central time zone. They're not. There's going to be a lot of logistical things with these conferences expanding, and I'm mainly talking about the Big Ten and the SEC that are going to. There's going to be there's some landmines there that they're not going to see. So I don't know. I think it's I think they'll all four get to make the final 12, but as far as getting back to the four, if I had to just bet on one guy, I'd bet on Saban.
Okay.
And Alabama.
Okay. And you know, I completely lost track with Dan's rant. Mister, did you answer this question yet or not?
I don't know, man. I'm over here just listening, man. I think I was in the back cave, man. But I can hit you real quick though, man. But I think Michigan and Texas will get back in that Final Four. I mean, Michigan just because who they are and what's been going on the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But I think Texas, Steve Sarkisian has done a real good job in recruiting and getting the type of players that he wants. And like and like Dan said, man, you're dealing with oil money. Like, come on, man. What else is there? They're gonna be able to get anybody they want to at any time, especially in the SEC now.
Okay, absolutely. So, Johnny, let's start with you. Out of these four teams, which team has the most to gain, both as a football program and an institution of higher education, by not just winning this semifinal game, but the national championship? Do you think these have fundraisers, enrollment, publicity standpoints?
Yeah, for sure. And I think again, this goes to Washington, right? If you look at, and I'm going to speak of this from the enrollment standpoint. When you play in Final Fours, when you're on TV a lot, when you're on all these things, people take notice. They're like, oh, what is the school? And they Google it. You get hits on the website. They start buying merchandise from the school. If you look at the Final Four last year, like FAU, their bookstore went up like 600% during the Final Four in their national championship run because they're on TV of all this free marketing, right? Look at what Mount Union's done. yes, Mount Union had total buy-in from everybody, and the school had total buy-in with the players and all that. But Mount Union playing in all those national championships in a row on ESPN made Mount Union become a successful institution to the point that they got enough money that they built a brand new engineering department. What happened with that? You get better students coming in. You can raise your GPA standard. That way, then you get students who usually have more money, who want to go into, say, engineering or another type of field. They're usually higher donors. They can pay more. Then you start to get more money rolling. Now, that's just an example. But Washington has the most to gain because they are the most, I'm going to say, underrepresented on national TV type of deal. If Washington can win the game and maybe go to national championship, their publicity will go through the roof because people will be donating back by the bucket loads. And I'll let Dan and Barth talk about that, but they'll be donating back by the bucket loads to raise the standard of that school to be the next Alabama. So it's Washington, and that's my rant.
Okay. Drew, what about you?
A lot of rants being thrown on the Ride Home Rants podcast today.
No, we're the rant show. We're used to it.
Fiddy hit it all on the spot. I mean, Washington has a lot to gain from this. I mean, especially when you have a second the Heisman. You could say how Dan's been talking about DeBoer the whole time. I mean, he molded him into that, being the type of quarterback he is in that system. And obviously Alabama, what clicks do they need or anything? They've been around forever. And Michigan, they've had enough clicks with Harbaugh this year, so they don't need any more. So they're all getting that. And then Texas, obviously, a big powerhouse too. So Washington definitely has the most to gain. And yeah, I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. Fiddy hit it all on the spot right there. So thanks for taking my words of wisdom there, Fiddy. You always know how to do that.
I like to give my knowledge when I can.
Jonas, what about you?
Yeah, I think I would agree. Washington, when you just look at the football brand, although I think Washington has a top tier football brand, it's just not at the same tier as Alabama, Michigan, and Texas.
Okay. Mister, what about you?
Yeah, I have to agree with 50. Washington most definitely have, have an opportunity to really put themselves in a good position, for the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, if they're able to pull this out and win a national championship. Because just like 50 said, I mean, all those marks that he hit, it's really important. When your school is out in the media, out on TV, getting free publicity, the student, everybody start buying in. Don't want to come in. You get your endowment big. Just everything can go right for them if they're able to win this national championship. So they got the biggest upswing for sure.
All right. Dan, what about you?
Yeah, so, just to your question, one of these teams is unlike the other three, and that's Washington. Alabama, this is their 77th bowl game all time. Michigan, this is their 51st bowl game, and Texas' 59th bowl game. So there's a deep amount of experience and legendary stories with those programs. Washington's been good. They've been to 42 bowl games all time, so it's not like they're way behind, but it's a different level of bowl, right? When you're playing for the MicronPC.com bowl back in the day in the 90s, that's not the same as playing in some of these other matchups these other schools are involved in from a national championship standpoint. So it's an outlier to the point that I forget who made it. It was Fiddy or somebody made a comment about the impact on revenue. If this were the March Madness tournament, I would agree. I don't so much personally agree with that from the football standpoint, because when March Madness happens in Florida Gulf Coast and Dunk City back in 2012, 2013 starts throwing lobs, beating Georgetown, their admissions apps went up 30% the next year. Their website blew up, crashed the server, the whole 9 yards. That's a whole different model, right? We're at Purdue. Drew Barth and I work at Purdue. Fairleigh Dickinson caused the problem last year, right? North Texas, we can pick on basketball all day long. Those schools are the ones that benefit deep from the publicity and the platform. In this football playoff, none of these schools are top 25 public institutions in the country. So the same stuff that affects the Mount Union, affects the March Madness, affects whatever, that's not going to affect any of these schools, right? These are semi-pro leagues. These are feeder systems to the NFL. It's what they are. It's what they've gone into. And frankly, at some point in time, we're going to end up having some sort of a subset where these schools become just full-blown minor league teams that they already basically are, especially with NIL in the equation. Again, I could just beat NIL to death. It's caused so many problems, and they've got to right that ship.
All right. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I'm not much on the administration side. I kind of stay in my lane with the coaching side of things. But I think the most to gain out of going to the semifinal, I'd agree with Drew in this regard, is Washington, just because they probably don't get as much as the publicity. Granted, they're undefeated right now and winning a lot of close games, and Penix being the Heisman. When it comes to the financial side of things, I think that they probably have the most to gain when it's going to be they're all over ESPN, all that good stuff that is free advertising, as Fiddy says. I think that they probably have the most to gain, as the other three juggernauts are probably more expected to be in this position.
Okay. Jovon, what about you?
I mean, I think Washington most definitely is a no-brainer. I mean, when you think about Alabama, you think about Michigan and Texas, their level of prestige far exceeds anything that Washington has. I mean, Washington has been really good, but they have just a different expectation on a yearly basis of making it to the college football playoff or being in the national championship. I mean, you think about all of their teams throughout history, you know, they've always been there at the pinnacle. I mean, Washington is now up and coming and, you know, has done some great things throughout, but I think the other three are already expected to be there. But when you throw in, you know, what you have to gain, I mean, I don't think they could get much more from being in this position, whereas Washington has a lot more to gain, especially like everybody has said, if they were able to pull off the national championship, what they would gain from that would be monumental.
All right. Hal, what about you?
Well, the question is who has the most to gain, right?
Yep.
And I think it's Texas because they haven't been there for a long time. And they got to, if they can, you know, if they could pull it off, this would be the first time since 19.
It's young.
When did Mac Brown won it? Yeah, Vince Young, whatever that was. It was early 2000s.
06.
06, yeah. So, you know, you're looking at 18 years. And when if the question's the most, there's obviously, and this has already been brought up, but the Texans have a lot more money. I mean, if you're just going to add up the money,
yeah.
if they win it all, it's going to pour. It's going to rain money in Austin.
Okay. I agree with all those for sure, but I think Washington definitely institutional wise, if they pull this off, they may need to update their website servers just to be safe for that for sure. But Jovon, let's stick with you just for this question. This one is just for you. You're a former Iowa Hawkout standout and a 4-year starter who went on to play numerous seasons in the NFL and the CFL. Coming from the Big Ten, how does playing in the Big Ten for Michigan prepare them not only for an Alabama game, but also potentially either a Washington or a Texas? Do you think Michigan's game against the likes of Ohio State and Iowa, you know, amongst others, prepared them for this?
Yeah, I mean, one thing about playing in the Big Ten is week in and week out, you're going to get physicality. So no matter what position you play, offensive line, defensive line, running backs, DBs, like you have to be physical to be able to play in the Big Ten on a week in and week out basis. You know, you think about all these different teams, the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Iowas, they're going to run the football. I mean, national championship right now, the playoff, Michigan is going to come in and they're going to try to impose their will up front, because that's what they do. You got to be able to defend the run, win the turnover battle, be able to play field position game when it needs to with the special teams. And that's what the Big Ten is built around. They're not flashy. They're not really going to score 50,000 points. That's why USC coming into the Big Ten, they're going to struggle because the Big Ten is going to be a defensive football, so you're going to have to play defense. And right now they don't play defense. but yeah, I think the thing about the Big Ten is that you can defend multiple different things, but it starts with defending the run first, and then when you can stop the run, everything else works in your favor.
Okay. Yeah, the Big Ten has always been known for their defensive sides of the ball, so I would agree with that. But so, Fiddy, let's jump to you. If Jim, because I know you're such a Jim Harbaugh fan for this question here, so if Jim Harbaugh loses another semifinal game for the third season in a row, along with his suspensions that he's had this year, is it better for him to leave Michigan and go back to the NFL? And where does Jim Harbaugh's legacy stand after this season if he does not win a national championship?
Here's what I'm going to say. I like Jim Harbaugh, the football player. I think anybody that remembers back to the 95 playoff run he had with the Colts, us old guys remember that great run he had. He was a tough as nails football player. I just don't like him as a coach. Yeah, if they lose again, I don't think Jim Harbaugh is considered a great coach. He's considered a really good coach. He's not a great upper echelon coach because he never could bring them to national legitimacy with winning that national title. I think he's better off going back to the NFL, and here's why. Because he can bring in all the mercenary coaches he wants. He can bring in all his players that he wants, and he can basically cheat as much as he wants until he finally gets caught by the NFL. But Jim Harbaugh was a better NFL coach than he is a college coach. I think that's shown in his record, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, a lot of these guys on here have been around NFL camps and players and this and that. It's harder to make NFL players buy in than it is college players because you're dealing with grown men who are on salaries and all that. But Jim Harbaugh gets that done because he's a former NFL player. So, yes, Jim Harbaugh needs to go back to the NFL, and if Jim Harbaugh doesn't win a national championship, he's just another coach.
Okay. Jonas, what about you?
Yeah, this one's hard for me, right? Because, you just kind of have a respect for the chair, So, it's hard for me to say that a guy who wins, 12, 13 games a year is not a really good football coach, even one of the greats. It is really hard to win football games. We're just throwing words around, right? Championships. That's just a word to us. But such an elusive feat that certainly, man, you go and you win that many games. I think you're still a really good football coach. That's kind of a tough one for me.
Okay. Dan, what about you?
Harbaugh's, he's going to go down. All these coaches are good, right? I mean, you could dissect them in terms of their struggles. I think Harbaugh, maybe my gut feeling is he tries to go back to the pros. That's all the rumors, right? And what's out there. But it's something I think Hal said earlier about, or someone mentioned it, that maybe Saban, I forget who said this. Forgive me, Hal, if it wasn't you, but somebody mentioned that Saban might, ride off in the sunset if he wins another one. And there's legitimately two of these coaches who might not be in college football next year if Saban and Harbaugh were to do something. But to that point, Harbaugh's legacy at Michigan is going to be taking Ohio State to the woodshed. Right, that's the biggest legacy he's got at Michigan. And that doesn't mean that Ohio State's not an elite program. They've been one of the best, arguably, for the last 2 decades in the Big Ten. But he's made his name off of that. And he's caused Ryan Day headaches off of that. So that for the fan base, they're going to love him forever because of the way he turned that ship around. Harbaugh's 1-6 in bowl games, right? So just like he was, struggling to beat Ohio State and then turned the tide and now hasn't lost in a few years, maybe this is his moment to turn the tide on a playoff game and win one. Because I really do think they can beat Alabama. Alabama's a fantastic team, but I actually think teams like Alabama were hit more by all these recent transfers and NIL money and all this type of – there's more parity than there was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago. Teams like Alabama were hurt way more than teams like Washington gained because of the way to bring in transfers and throw some cash around, or Texas, which has always thrown cash around, arguably, but they're doing it publicly now. those teams gained a lot more than a team like Alabama did. Alabama didn't gain; they lost, and so at least a little bit. There's still 4 and 5 stars walking the hallways everywhere, but there's less of them than there was at one point. So that's the reason I think Michigan can still win. But Harbaugh's legacy, you could argue that his playoff legacy is defined by this game, but for the most part, there's too many things over time that have already kind of manufactured where to land. And that's from Connor Stallions to all the drama to, sleeping at a kicker's house on a recruiting visit one time with social media posts and all kinds of stuff like that. Harbaugh's got quirks. That's what he'll be remembered for, his quirks. But frankly, Michigan fans will love him forever because he's beaten Ohio State.
Okay. Drew, what about you?
It's all Michigan fans care about. I think if they go even 1-11 to beat Ohio State, that's all they care about. So, I mean, money talks, though, too. That Michigan offered him, 10 years, $125 million? You're telling me $12.5 million, that's a little hard to turn down sometimes. It's like Live Golf, you get offered $400 million. I mean, I don't, that's a different topic for a different day, but I wouldn't join with Live Golf personally unless someone offered me $400 million, then I'm probably going. But anyways, I don't think it's legacy. I mean, 6-game suspension this year. We don't know what suspension's coming for next year yet, though, because there's still more coming out. So, I mean, I think Fiddy might be right. He might try to pursue the NFL. There's going to be a lot of head coaching openings. So, maybe the Bears need somebody. Who knows? I mean, there's so many things that can happen. I mean, he wins. He can ride off in the sunset into the NFL. I mean, it's a good way to go into it. So there's just a lot that obviously has to happen in the offseason. So, it just has to play out by ear and see what happens.
All right. Mister, what about you?
Man, I tell you what, it's some excellent point. Me personally, man, I really don't think that he will leave right now until until he's able to win a national championship, and until he shown that he has really turned the program all the way around. If you think about it, what the last 10, 15 years Michigan has been, from the time. And I go back a little farther real quick. When my brother was there that whole time period, and even, maybe 5 years afterwards, Michigan was dominant. Then all of a sudden, they fell off. You went through, 3 or 4 different head coaches. Michigan is not trying to go through another coaching change right now. With all the stuff that's going on with the NIL deals and, you're able to, get players. One of the biggest things, they did not have the players that they had back in the day. I think now that is slowly turning around. They're getting some players, they're stealing some players back to come back to the maize and blue or whatnot. But he's not. I don't think he's going anywhere. Why? Why would you leave and you're in college right now? I mean, he's pretty much writing his ticket right now. Does he want the NFL trouble? I mean, he must love the college trouble right now. So I think he love it. I think he love where he at. I think he got a lot more to prove to himself. I don't think coaches, really don't care about the outside noise. And all you guys who are coaches, you understand what I'm talking about with that. But I think he'll be there. Until he's ready to leave.
Okay, Jovon, what about you?
Yeah, I think legacy-wise, I think his legacy is that he has consistently been one of the better teams at Michigan in the country. I mean, winning 10-plus games a year is hard to do. It's not something that's just accomplished, by fate. But he's been very good at Michigan. And I think with him beating Ohio State the last few years, the Michigan fan brass is going to love him forever, like everybody said. But jumping back into the NFL, when you got guys that are making more money than you, I mean, that is like way harder of a beast to try to overcome when you got grown men who make more money than you, that when they go talk to the general manager, they're going to get you out of there faster than they're going to get rid of their franchise players. So I think where he is, he should be looking forward to being at Michigan for a lot longer because I think right now he has it going and they got some great recruiting classes coming in. And I think they're building to possibly win a national championship. I think they're right on the cusp. So, I mean, if I were him, I mean, I would consider staying at Michigan over going to the NFL.
Okay. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainties. Depends on how much he would want to, or Harbaugh would want to deal with moving forward, whether it's more suspensions, if he wants to deal with more headaches that would arise from outside sources of the university. And then also the uncertainty of stepping into a situation. I think there's a lot of factors in the NFL that play into wanting to take a head coaching job there, and for all the reasons that all of these guys have talked about. I think that his legacy left at Michigan is what he inherited from the university and the situation he stepped into, and the steady climb he's been on to put Michigan where they're at now it's been impressive. And if he were to be a lifer at Michigan, I think he would probably have a statue built for him by the time he's done that with his time there. So that's what I got to say about Harbaugh.
All right, Hal, round us out on this one.
Well, I agree with what just got said about his legacy at Michigan. And as far as him going to the NFL, I think that depends on who the owner is and what team you're talking about, how they approach him. I remember when I was at Kentucky, I got approached by a lot of NFL guys. And I asked Dennis Erickson one time at a clinic, and because he had done that, he had gone from Miami to, I guess, Seattle, and then back to Oregon State. And I asked him, I said, some of these guys are talking to me. What do you think? Because you've done it. And Jim Harbaugh already knows this because he's done it. But, he said, well, where you're at right now, everybody listens to what you say. He said, if you go to the NFL, you're never better than the fourth best ego. Because you got an owner, you got a GM, you probably got some high-paid player. There's at least three guys in front of you all the time, and your opinion's always going to be the fourth one. And I always took that I always thought that was a pretty bright thing, and he had done it, and Harbaugh knows this too. So I think that depends on which team it would be and how they approach it.
Okay, yeah. I'll weigh in a little bit. I think that there's been so many rumors the Chargers are reaching out to him, and all these teams that are going to be needing coaches coming up next year. I don't see him leaving. I mean, it's not broke there in Michigan. Why try to fix it? You're winning games. You're playing for it's playoffs games and national championships basically almost every year. You're beating the brakes off of Ohio State, which I love because I cannot stand Ohio State. So just keep going and putting it to all these college teams and keep doing what you're doing. I would say for Harbaugh. But last question.
Right, let me throw this at you real quick, though, and I don't know if everybody knows this. Harbaugh did play for the Bears. That's what he came into the NFL with, and he did play for the Chargers. And Harbaugh did coach at San Diego, and he also coached at Stanford. So him going to the West Coast back in the warm weather isn't too far-fetched.
Right.
Just throwing that out there to everybody.
That's why I thought the Chargers reaching out was kind of interesting because of that. He's kind of a West Coast guy. So, getting back into that warm weather. But let's round this off here, and, Johnny, we'll stay with you. Are you looking forward to the college football playoffs expanding to 12 teams? Why or why not?
No, and here's why. I'll just make it really quick. Someone like Liberty, Toledo, SMU, any of those teams that get to a major bowl game, right, that have been good 11, 12 win teams from the non-Power 5, they can win that game and they celebrate and make the program great like UCF did and all this and that. But they're not built to sustain winning against those major teams to win 3 games to win a national championship. There's no way Liberty could beat Oregon, then beat Alabama, then beat Texas. They're just not built for it. But winning that one game is way more beneficial to them. So, no, I'm not a fan of the 12 teams. 8 is plenty, and just go from there. The top 8 are the top 8. That's my opinion.
All right. Jonas, what about you?
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, we went from 4 to 12. What happened to 6, 8, 10? We just thought. We saw what happened this year, right? There's arguably 2, 3 more teams, maybe 4. I know we can all think of 2.
Yeah.
That definitely should be in this thing. So I think that's probably your margin for error, but I'd like to see, I think 6 is perfect, no more than 8.
Okay. Yeah. I've been saying this I'll weigh in real quick on this. I've been saying this since the college football started. It needs to be 8 teams is my magic number. 8 teams. You get the 5 Power 5 conferences. All those conference champions get in. And then, like Fiddy was saying, you get a Liberty, a Toledo, something like that, a non-Power 5. They go undefeated. Give them a bid, see what they can do, and give them the chance at that spotlight. I think 8 is the magic number for me. But Dan, what about you?
Yeah, I'm excited for the 12-team playoff personally because I'm excited to leave the 14 invitational that we have right now, which really doesn't necessarily have even the best teams in it. My background would have a Georgia Bulldog on it if Georgia was in this. I still think they could win the whole thing if they were in a true playoff. But we have an invitational, so I'd pick Texas. With that said, the 12-team playoff, what I like about it is, Fiddy, I agree with what you said traditionally about the big school, like a UCF or a Toledo or someone. That was exciting, and that made bowl games fun. In this current era, that what we grew up on, kind of what you're referencing, that's gone, in my opinion, because all of a sudden it's opt-outs. If you have an ounce of ability to go to the NFL or you have an ounce of career protection to put in place, you opt out. That's why we see it's a freshman bowl going on in a lot of these games where you've got 20 guys sitting out potentially or 10 to 15 starters sitting out. So in that case, in this modern era, by going to 12 teams, if you're like 13 to 15 or you're fighting until the end of the season and you get in as that 12 team, you're not, the guys aren't opting out, right? We get to see the talent on the field. So I'm excited that the talent may actually play in some of these games. And also, depending on how they structure this, if they're going to have those first round games be on college campuses, what an electric atmosphere, right? To bring a playoff game to a college campus. You talk about an economic impact. That's the cities, the hotels, the restaurants, the bars. That's what goes on. The D3 playoffs do a really nice job on a very, very, very small scale. But the Stag Bowl and all the playoff, the 32 teams that work their way down to the final round in the Stag Bowl, that's an example of how it can work in a traditional playoff sense. I agree with what was said earlier about going to 6 or 8 teams. I would have liked to have done that 2-3 years ago. I think it's overdue. But because of the NIL stuff that we've done and because of the opt-outs and because of where things have landed in 2024, I'm really glad we're going to 12 because at least we can get 12 fully rostered teams to get in a true playoff and figure out who's the best. I don't think it'll be a long time, in my opinion, before it goes beyond 12, just because 12 is a lot. But at least it's something to try to determine a true champion rather than what we do right now, which is an invitational. And the invitational is a lot better than the computer system, right? When the BCS picked 2 people, that was worse. So at least we have an invitational, but I'm excited for a true playoff.
All right, Mister, what about you?
You know what, man? Until they use the same format as NCAA, Division I, Division II, Division III, all this other stuff is just a bunch of bull crap, man. You know, you got a committee of people who putting people in who didn't want to be put in. It's not played on a football field. You know, I'm not even interested in any of this stuff, man. I can't even tell you the last time I really watched a whole full championship game anyway. You know, because it's just a bunch of, I want this team in. I'm going to put this team in. You know, I like this team. I like this team. When is it going to be about, you know what I'm saying, we out here playing on the football field, and because we won, I get to go to the playoff because I won. You know, I won my conference, or I won, I won this. You know, this committee, you know, it's like all of us right here in the panel, and we decide, hey, man, I'm going to put Michigan in. All right, well, you go to Ohio State. You go to Texas. You go to Alabama. Now, you know what? Let's get UCF in. Yeah, I mean, when is it going to be about the field? We always say we play on the field. And then, you know, you got players leaving. You got players that have left, that are in, that their team are going to the playoff when they left, and they in the transfer portal. So when is it gonna stop? You know, when is it gonna be real again? Just let me know when it's gonna be real again. But I tell you what, I'll be down Savannah in overtime. That's what I'll be doing. Have me a picnic colada. I'll be gonna get this stuff right. Because right now it's just a bunch of bullcrap. It's all con. You know, it's fake. It's fake. Fake news. That's what it is. Fake news. And there's my rant. I'm sorry. There's my rant.
No, you good. Drew, go on.
Why do you always put me following the rants on these people? Come on, Bono.
Hey, I gave you a break in the middle of the show. I can't give you a break the entire show. Let's go, Drew.
Fiddy, you should be happy with the 12-team playoff because now your Rainbow Warriors have a slim chance of getting in. But, hey, there's still a chance.
Go Bows.
I'm excited to see a 12-team playoff, and it extends. I think the dates came out, extends a week or something, I think, now for college football. So who doesn't want to see an extra week of college football going on? I mean, it's right in line with the NFL playoffs, all that. I mean, 3 days in a row, you can't really beat that. So, I mean, I'm excited to see it happen. I mean, nobody does it better than Division III setup, the 1 through 32. That's a great setup. I mean, Division III at heart, so that's what I'm just leave it at that. But, I mean, yeah, I'm excited to see it go to 12.
All right. Jovon, what about you?
I would have much rather it been at 6 or maybe even 8, just because it would have gave you more of an incentive to get to number 1 or 2. But they got to do away with the selection committee. Like that is the biggest problem of all of the college football playoff is that you have a panel like Mr. said, you got a panel of guys who sit in a room and handpick who they want to play who. Like, it's not about the game. It's not about the product on the field that you go out there and work your tail off all the way from off-season, summer workouts, training camp, and all of those things. It's all about these guys that sit in a room and say, well, we like Bama, we like Georgia, we like all these different schools. Let's put them in and let's see what they can do. Like, that's not a true national champion. That's not how you determine a national champion. I think the only thing that the 12-team playoff does is give my Iowa Hawkeyes a chance to get in as probably 11 or 12 seed and then see what happens playing good defense. I don't like it. I can't say I love it, but I mean, I do think 8 would be ideal. I mean, even 6, and then it gives you that opportunity to try to work a little bit harder to get a 1 or 2 seed so you get a first-round bye. I mean, that would only be my only other option.
All right, Ryan.
Wow, let me jump in here real quick. I'm going to ask Jovon this. Jovon, Iowa doesn't lose to Minnesota on that punt return by Dijon. I think that was who returned it. So if they don't lose that game, they're a one-loss team going into Michigan. If they beat Michigan, do you think Iowa even gets in the Final Four for the playoffs? No, right? Because
you know why? Because the reason why is because they don't have that flash factor. You know, they're not going to be offensively. They're not going to go out there and they're not going to score 30, 40 points. They're not going to give you anything that's going to be like, oh my God, like look at this team, like they're so good. I mean, they just get it done. And I think that would have easily been a thing to say, you know what, even though they're the Big Ten champion, you know, we like Michigan. They beat Michigan in the Big Ten. They're still not getting in. I think they would have probably ended up taking Georgia or even Ohio State. I mean, I think they would have easily been like, who's the favorite? Let's pick the team that gives us the most flash. That's going to give us the more bang for our buck.
All right.
Good point.
Ryan, what about you with the 12-team playoff?
Yeah, the 12 teams playoff, I think the home college football environments for those games are going to be absolutely electric. And the economic side of it, they're all going to thrive in those environments with what Dan pointed on. And then the home playoff of environments in the Division I college football game. I mean, you think of a whiteout at Penn State or and 110,000 fans and just for 60 straight minutes, good luck to that offense trying to be able to communicate at the line of scrimmage. I think those are going to be that would be the best part about it. I don't necessarily like expanding the 12 teams just because I don't know why they even went to 4. If there's or if you think of Power 5, it'd be 5 conferences and being able to put those top 5 in. And if you want to expand to 6 and then give the top 2 a bye and have 3 straight weeks of college football playoffs, I think that would be great. But expanding to 12, I think it's going to be I just think that's too many almost, and being able to distinguish a winner from that. But then again, that's why I'm not on that committee and I don't have to make those decisions. I just get to sit back and watch the product on the field. So not a fan of it, but I think the environments for those football playoffs are going to be something to see for sure.
All right. Hal, round us out here.
Well, I've got a lot of experience with playoffs. I've done the NAI Division II and Division III, and they're all different. But there's a committee on all of them. There's always that in Division III. There's always that 33rd team that gets left out, and somebody's always going to gripe and complain. I'm kind of like my late great friend Mike Leach was. I think we should just expand it to 64 or 32. Like D3 does, and because the bowls are becoming meaningless, the portal and the opt out stuff, and they're not even a good gauge. It used to be if you played a bowl game and you were 6-6, you might get fired, but now you can't even judge a coaching staff on a bowl game because if you're a 6-6 team gets to go to a bowl, I mean how meaningless is that? I mean I'd rather see them in the season sooner. Have a D3 type setup for the playoffs, and like a couple of comments about the excitement on campus. That's really true. There really is excitement on campus. And I'll tell you the other thing that happens when you have playoffs and games like that. There's some weird stuff happens because some of it gets down to which team wants to continue playing. And that's you'll have some teams get to the finals or the semifinals or the finals that you thought never could have done it, but they do just because their players want to keep playing, and maybe some guys with more talent don't. So I think it would be exciting to do it that way, but I don't think they will. They won't do it until ESPN decides to get out of the bowl business.
Yeah, it's – go ahead, Dan.
Bono, I got a quick question. Hal, I'm curious on your opinion of this because, the past week we've watched coaches and players eat Pop-Tarts. We've watched mayonnaise be dumped on their head. We've watched French fries be dumped on their head in a potato bowl. So I'm just curious, as a former coach that was at the highest of levels as you were and developed national talent, how is that even a possible motivator these days to say, hey, we're going to go play in the Idaho Potato Bowl, and if we win, as a coach, I get a bucket of French fries dumped on my head?
It's horrible. It's all ESPN. ESPN owns most of those bowls, and it's just made for TV stuff, is what it is. I think since because of the portal and the NIL and the opt out, it has changed the complexion of those games so much that they're certainly not worth the embarrassment anymore. And they'd be better off. I mean, you could still play them in those sites if you wanted to, if the people in the town just want to have a bowl. But I think you'd be better off just to have a 32-team playoff. And then you wouldn't have all this complaining about who didn't get in. I mean, if you get paired up and you start playing in November and you end up about this time of year with a championship, and everybody will know who the best team was because they had to play it down.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways this could go. I agree with that for sure. I mean, but first and foremost, I think the committee needs to get out of it completely, and that way it will be a true champion, because like everyone said it, it's just a group of people saying, I want this team in. I like Alabama, so let's put Alabama in. Oh, somebody from the SEC, God forbid the SEC doesn't make the semifinals and the playoffs in college football. The world might collapse. It's just, that I could go on another hour and a half rant on this about how Florida State, a Power 5 undefeated conference champion, is a 5 seed and not playing for a national championship, but yet Alabama is it. Yeah, we don't have enough time on the show for that. I could go on for days for that, but that is actually going to wrap up our college football playoff preview show. I want to thank all of my guests for coming on, taking time out of their morning to sit and talk a little college football with me, and everything like that. As always, if you enjoyed the show, be a friend, tell a friend. If you didn't, tell them anyways, because they might like it just because you didn't. That's going to do it for me, and I will see y'all next week.
The Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by W Energy. Energy drinks made for gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. For gamers, streamers, and podcasters alike. Go to the link in the description where you can find the best energy drinks out there. Less caffeine than a cup of coffee. Also, no jitters and no crash afterwards. Use the promo code Mike Bono and get yourself 10% off. Also, the Ride Home Rants podcast is brought to you by my favorite sponsor of the show, and that is Shankit Golf. Golf apparel made for the everyday golfer. We might not go out and shoot a 6 under par. We're probably going to shoot a 6 over par, but this is going to give us the gear that's going to help us rock it on and off of the course. Go to the link in the bio, use the promo code Mike Bono, and get yourself 10% off there as well.